Hello, my name is Mark Gibson, and you're listening to the podcast version of the Teagasc Signpost Series, a weekly webinar that promotes and examines sustainability in Irish farming. Good morning, and you're welcome to a very special edition of the Signpost webinar. Today we'll be exploring the role that agroforestry can play on Irish farms. Later we'll be joined by Minister of State at the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Michael Healy-Rae, where we'll discuss the policy aspects of agroforestry. We'll also be meeting Kilkenny farmer Brian Nicholson, who is one of the early adopters of agroforestry. But first, we're now joined by Frances McHugh, Teagasc Communications Specialist, who's going to explain what agroforestry is. Frances.
Thanks, Mark. And yes, I'll just give a quick introduction to agroforestry. So agroforestry is the integration of trees with either crops or livestock on the same land. So you can see there on the left, I suppose what we all think about forestry beside farms, beside farming. And then on the right, you can see agroforestry, that integration between trees and farming on the one piece of ground. So there are three types of agroforestry, I suppose named in Ireland, and the main one being silvopasture, where you can have trees and grass together. Silvo-arable, where we have cereals, fruit or vegetables growing amongst the trees. And then forest gardening, a small scale forest that provides a source of organic forest food. So the supports for agroforestry are part of the 12 forest types funded under the Afforestation Scheme. So you can see there agroforestry is forest type 8, the establishment grant of €8,555 per hectare, and then the annual premium €975 per hectare for 10 years. So when we think about agroforestry, it can look very differently depending on the layout, but the main requirement, I suppose, is that you have 400 trees per hectare and a minimum size of 0.5 of a hectare. So you see there on the left, planted singly 5 by 5 metre, where sheep or something can graze between the trees. You can plant in rows, a more kind of formal arrangement where machinery can be brought in, and that can be planned out particularly for the type of machine needed. On the right then, if you needed maybe to graze larger animals, the group structure is much better. So just a quick rundown through the benefits of agroforestry, and I suppose why we're encouraging people to have a look at it. So things like shade and shelter, extended grazing, timber production, water quality benefits, improved animal welfare, carbon capture, better livestock productivity, improved soil health, improved biodiversity and nutrient capture. So that's all in the context of the grant supports that are there and the fact that it combines well with other farm schemes. So anybody looking to maybe plant a bit of agroforestry and are interested, we'd encourage people to get advice, get out and about and have a look at examples and see what agroforestry system might suit your farm. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Frances. So now that we've understand what's involved in agroforestry, I'm delighted to be joined by Minister of State at the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Michael Healy-Rae. Good morning, Minister, and you're very welcome to the Signpost webinar.
Good morning, Mark, and good morning to everybody there. And I thank you very much for hosting this very important webinar on agroforestry. Since coming into this job over 12 months ago, I obviously knew about agroforestry beforehand, but I really took it on board. And one of the things that I was very anxious from the very outset was to take what I believed in and that I believed was going to be and was very successful, but to try and enhance it, improve it, make it better, make it more financially rewardable. And I'm glad to say that during the course of the midterm review, myself and the Director of Forestry and all of the team involved in the Forestry Department, we took on that job with what I'd call a lot of interest, and we have been making improvements. So in my opinion now and the Department of Finance have actually recently given us to go ahead with all of this. So things are looking very good for agroforestry. And if you ask me to find a fault with agroforestry, an awful lot of people in Ireland today that own land. And if you were to say to them, well, what would you think of agroforestry? To be honest with you, the first thing they would say is, well, what exactly is it? Because they're not aware of it. And the excellent way that Francis explained it there, if people just literally could hear what Francis said and take that on board, they'd have a perfect full understanding of the broad outline of the scheme, the fact that there are a few different types of agroforestry, the financial benefits of doing so, and of course the environmental benefits of having agroforestry, because there is something very, very nice if you can have animals interacting with trees. And obviously our commercial forests don't lend themselves to that. If you plant an ordinary tree plantation, even if it's hardwood or if it's softwood, if it's for commercial timber, that doesn't really lend itself towards grazing as well, because of exactly what it is. It's take you over the ground completely. But agroforestry is a departure from that, whether it is for crops, whether it is for food, as Francis excellently presented, or if it's for grazy animals, and also indeed being able to cut. You could cut round bales of silage, you could save hay if you would weather. And so I think not only do I think agroforestry is good, but I think it can be sold better to the people in Ireland who have land and who would be very open to this if they knew about it, knew the financial benefits of it, and knew what we as a department and all of you are trying to do, and that is enhance a scheme that's there and let landowners see the benefit of being involved in it.
Absolutely, and there's no question of those multiple dividends, the environmental and the financial for the farmer. You mentioned the midterm review of the forestry programme that you recently completed. Could you give us some insights into some of the outcomes from that?
Well, just a couple of the broad headlines in that. To stick with agroforestry, and I'll be announcing this very, very soon, as in probably one of the days of next week. And I'll be at liberty then to explain exactly the improvements. But other things then that we were doing during the midterm review was things that were under our control in the department. For example, what is a farmer when it comes to planting other types of trees, and trying to help more people be eligible for the 20-year rather than the 15-year premium. The fact that costs have grown enormously over the last number of years with regard to fencing, with regard to making roads, the cost of material, the cost of labour, the cost of hiring machinery. And what we're trying to do in the midterm review is reflect that by enhancing, improving and making better what were already good schemes, but trying to make them better for the farmer at the end of the day. Because remember, when it comes to what we're trying to do, and that is plant trees of all different types in the ground, one thing we need to do that in Ireland is we need the help, cooperation and interest of the most important person of all, and that is the men and women and the families of Ireland who own land, and trying to show them the attractiveness of planting trees.
And that's what we're about today, is to highlight those benefits, but also to consider the practical implications as well. Minister, the agroforestry scheme that's been in place for, I suppose, a couple of years now at this stage, what would you say are the main attractive elements for farmers, and has there been much interest from the farming population in the scheme so far?
Well, there has, and but again, it's like everything, and that's why I so much appreciate the fact that Teagasc are hosting this webinar to try and create more awareness. The monies that can be accrued from agroforestry, and this is very important for the world we're living in today. The one thing we're sure of in life is debt and taxes, and but when it comes to any payments that are made or any benefits that are there from planting trees, are obviously income tax free. That is a very welcome thing in this country. This is something that this government supports very, very much. My senior minister, Minister Martin Hayden, is fully behind our forestry programme, as are my other colleagues, Minister Timmy Dooley and Minister Noel Grealish. We work very well as a political team. along with all of the excellent staff that are involved in the department, not just in Agricultural House, but based throughout the country. And you have excellent people then, just like one of your speakers there today, John Casey. We've, good, what I'd call sound, solid people that are knowledgeable, that are factual, and that are good people to go out, put on a pair of boots, go out and meet a farmer, a landowner, and explain exactly what we're about and exactly what they and their families can benefit from planting trees. And it's just, we have a job of work to do, because, Mark, at the end of the day, it's like I said at the very beginning, if you were to go around and do a type of a poll, a survey, like you see every week, the political surveys, if we did a survey on agroforestry, people would say, it sounds very interesting. Yeah, got that. But exactly what is it? And like, that is what you would be asked by an awful lot of people who would be very knowledgeable about every other aspect of agriculture, and indeed maybe forestry. So to me, it's a massive growth sector. And that's why I'm so grateful to you all for involving me in a little way here today in trying to be part of the awareness that we're trying to create.
We're entering into I suppose, a new phase of the CAP in the next couple of years. We're not sure if the current one will be extended. But beyond that, I'm sure farmers are wondering, what is the long-term commitment to forestry and agroforestry by the government, and what would you like to see happening there? We also have Ireland will be hosting the presidency this year. I'd be interested in any of the measures you'd like to see or outcomes from that during Ireland's presidency.
Well, first of all, our own house, as we'll call it, and keep your own house in order. I can assure you that the Taoiseach, the Taoiseach, and when those roles will reverse, those two people are very, very sincere in their commitment to Irish forestry, to the forestry programme, to the new programme, which we, to be honest, have actually started working on, because we had a number of jobs to do in this department, and a number of what I'd call problems and issues. Obviously, we had the devastation following from Storm Owen, and I believe that we've all worked very well together to try and assist landowners who were so adversely affected at that time. And we've made great strides and great progress with regard to that problem, in conjunction with the excellent foresters throughout the country, the registered foresters, the people that we can rely on for good, sound, solid advice, the sawmills, the hauliers, the contractors who work on the ground. We're really all part of a team. It's like a football team. No one of us is any good on our own, but if we all work together, we can do very well. And then with regard to CAP, I'm very confident. I really believe in Minister Martin Hayden. I believe in his capability and his, what I would call, steering of the ship, because so far, whether it was regard to the nitrates derogation, whether it was with regard to the Mercicor deal, and the fact that this government had a commitment in it in the programme for government, along with our commitment to forestry, but also our anti-stance on the whole Mercicor trade deal. Minister Hayden has showed great ability, in my opinion, and he is and will be doing the same when it comes to the presidency of the EC, and also the fact that his work in trying to ensure that we get the best deal possible for Irish farmers. I have every confidence in him in that role, and we'll all play our role. But indeed, agriculture during the 6 months will be to the fore, and we have a great reputation throughout Europe and throughout the world when it comes to food quality, and when it comes to the way we do our farming. And obviously, when the headline news came out and what was being proposed, a 20% cut, well, you know, it's no more than anybody doing a deal. Like, was I surprised when that was said to us? Not at all, because that was an opening shot, as much as to say, well, this is what we are thinking, and we have to then battle, you know. Whereas if they hadn't said that, it would have been a case of we were starting from where we were. They obviously want to put us on the back foot, and have us starting from a lesser position. That's obviously a tactic, and it's a political tactic in my opinion, but it's something that we will have to deal with and work very diligently on. But when you speak about commitment, whether it's here in Ireland or throughout the rest of Europe, one thing that we know for certain, we need timber. I don't want a situation in Ireland, for example, where we have to import all of our timber from Scotland or places like that. And then if you look at the bigger global picture, I certainly, for the construction industry, don't want a situation where if we want timber in Europe, that we'll have to be bringing it from Russia, that we'll have to be bringing it from South America, or any of these countries, because it makes no sense. We are an excellent country for growing timber in very good quality in very quick time. And other parts of Europe are jealous of the fact that we can produce good strong boxwood, a renewable source of a very important product for so many different uses. And even our pulpwood, we've such market for it, we've such need for it. And as you know, we're doing great work with regard to trying to expand the use of timber in construction, and trying to ensure that we can use more and more, build higher. And we have a steering group involved in that. And we have people who are working very, very diligently in this regard.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. We're going to be rejoined by the Minister a little later on in the show this morning. So we'd like to thank the Minister for joining us this morning. So thank you, Minister. So we're now going to be joined by Brian Nicholson, who is a farmer who has agroforestry on his farm at home. After we have a short video here of Brian's farm, we're going to have a chat with Brian about his journeys to date. So we'll roll the video now.
Nestled in the heart of the Kilkenny countryside, farmer Brian Nicholson takes pride in farming sustainably and has recently incorporated agroforestry on his farm.
I'm farming just over 100 hectares, predominantly sheep. There's tillage and cattle as well. 70 hectares of the farm is in the middle of conversion into organics, and we're looking at putting 19 hectares of agroforestry in presently.
Agroforestry is a land use practice that brings together trees in combination with livestock or crops on the same parcel of land. This dynamic approach to integrated farming unlocks a wealth of ecological and economic benefits, driven by the positive interactions between trees and agriculture.
Teagasc is promoting agroforestry as a land use change and land use where appropriate. Agroforestry combines trees with farming, creating a win-win for your wallet and the environment. By enhancing your farm's overall productivity, reducing its environmental footprint, and diversifying income, agroforestry can deliver multiple benefits. In Brian's case, it works very well. We're looking at agroforestry as a means of adding to the farm rather than subtracting from it.
For Brian, this new venture started in the spring of 2024, and Teagasc provided valuable assistance in identifying suitable areas for agroforestry on his farm.
As I looked ahead, I saw the potential of putting it in onto more of the farm, especially along the river, where it'll help reduce leach and nutrients into the river basin. From a financial point of view, there's an annual payment, but I'm also able to keep my farm payments on the land area as well, which includes the organics and the BISS.
New agroforestry planting is now supported with very generous funding available under the Afforestation Grant and Premium Scheme, administered by the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. Whether implemented alone or alongside other afforestation options, agroforestry empowers farmers to achieve a blend of environmental, economic and practical objectives. As with any scheme, there is preparation and paperwork involved.
Come with the decisions made, I contacted the company that I'm looking to employ to establish the agroforestry, and they took on all the administrative side of the process from there. I can just farm away as is.
Brian's registered forester explains his role and his input into planning and organising the establishment of agroforestry.
We assess the land for suitability, including all environmental considerations. We advise Brian firstly on the afforestation grants and the annual income tax-free forest premiums. We picked the best species for the site. We also did the site layout and planting options. We then submitted his afforestation application and worked on his behalf in progressing the application. This did involve our in-house ecologists who looked after the environmental assessments.
After advice from both Teagasc and his forester, and having received planting approval from the department, Brian made the decision to incorporate agroforestry into his farm. The process from taking it from concept to fruition took approximately 12 months. We now hear from Brian and his forester Ivan during the first stages of the agroforestry establishment.
Once we got approval, then we had to wait for the planting season to come back around to be able to plant. The boys arrived on the 2nd of December and have been here since and will be finished up before the new year.
Before we start, we have to make sure firstly that we are adhering to the licensing conditions, especially the environmental requirements. Next, we did the ground cultivation by ripping for the lines which are selected. We put in the tree supports, we supply and plant the trees. We are planting 6 species in this case, a mix of faster and slower growing species.
Within a couple of weeks, the planting of trees was progressing well, with forestry contractors busy on site.
We're into our second week of groundworks and planting and that, and we'll take probably another 2 weeks to get things wrapped up. And I mean the weather is holding up well, which has resulted in very little delays so far.
Research tells us that intergenerational involvement in the initial decision to plant a new forest delivers successful outcomes for this permanent land use change.
The family is very enthusiastic about what's happening down here. They haven't been down that much at the moment because a lot is happening while they're in school, but they'll be down at the weekends then to survey what's the progress has been while they've been in school.
Once the planting is complete, the forester will maintain Brian's site for the next 4 years, and this work is covered by the grant.
It's great coming down here and seeing the progress come along and kind of envisaging how the farm is going to look in 10, 15, 20 years time once the trees start coming up and we have the cover around, but also the stock to be able to graze around it as well. There's been a bit of a change around the fields here with the tree supports and shelters going up. I'm speaking to a neighbour there lately who's been watching it, and he was inquiring how things are going, and he's very complimentary about what's going on, and I suppose it's given him a bit of food for thought for the future as well.
It's springtime, and the planting stage of Brian's agroforestry project is now complete. With the trees planted and protected, Brian is now able to graze his sheep around the trees and integrate the agroforestry plot into his overall grazing system on his farm.
Yeah, so it's just the start of May here now. We got the planting finished in early January. The lambing proceeded then during March, and the ewes and lambs arrived out to the fields as they lamb down, and we're rotating around the paddocks in the farm there now with the ewes and lambs.
Early management and maintenance is crucial for the successful establishment of these young trees. This can be carried out by the registered forester or indeed by the owner. Regarding the surrounding grass, it's similar to any other grass field where ongoing agricultural management is required, as Brian now explains.
I suppose the whole process was straightforward. I mean, we put a plan together, we implemented the plan, and we're here today now with everything in place, so we are. Yeah, so the company will manage it for the first 5 years till it's fully established. If there's any trees need to be replanted or that in that period of time, they look after all of that. I look after the grassland and the stock around it, so I do. This will all be just grazing for the next few years. They're the fields that I primarily just graze. I don't take cuts of silage off of these fields, but I will have to get in and top weeds and that during the summer.
With increasing pressure to meeting climate goals, agroforestry is more relevant than ever in terms of advancing farm output with the environment, as well as promoting the well-being of the farmer to create a sustainable farming system. Brian reflects on his new agroforestry enterprise.
The agroforestry was a positive benefit to the farm. There was a financial benefit, there was a benefit for nature, and there was also a benefit for the stock and the farm going forward. So, you know, it was ticking an awful lot of boxes for me and for the farm and for the future. And very, very little stress from my part. The company had all that to look after. One of the big things within the family is we're only minding the land for the next generation, so we're always trying to improve it, both from a financial point of view and from a biodiversity point of view, that we're leaving it in a better place for the next generation to take it on. I'm very, very happy with the agroforestry.
By combining trees with farming, agroforestry creates a win-win situation, enhancing yields, lowering environmental impact and diversifying our income. It offers access to generous forestry grants and premiums, ongoing tree products and more resilient farm systems. For communities, it means more diverse food options and stronger local economies. And for the future, it can help keep farms productive while safeguarding nature.
There is a lot of information now available on agroforestry, information on financial supports, as well as learnings from existing agroforestry case studies. You can contact your local Teagasc Forestry Advisor as a first step to see if agroforestry will suit your farming system.
Some really stunning images there of Brian's farm in County Kilkenny. Brian, you're so welcome to the webinar this morning. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thanks, Mark.
Brian, you've obviously been on an adventure over the last couple of years there with agroforestry. Could you tell us what was your initial motivation, or what made you look at agroforestry as an option for your farm?
Yeah, so I suppose it initially started that I had ash dieback on a couple of plots in the existing forestry, and as I was looking at that, I identified other parts of the farm that agroforestry would be of benefit both financially and environmentally. So that's where it kind of stemmed from.
Very good. And so what was your first step on that whole journey?
Yeah, so we looked into the different options and that, and went through the whole process. And when I had figured out what I was going to do, and then we made contact with a forestry company to start the ball rolling.
Very good. So that initial conversation was with your advisor, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. And we're going to hear from Terry a little later on. And you mentioned your neighbours looking on with interest. What has been the overall reaction in the area? I'm sure people looking over the fence or over the hedge
they've been intrigued, and so the questions about how things are coming along and the progress, and that is, every time I meet them, they're asking about it. So there's definitely interest there. So there is.
Very good, very good. And you mentioned during the video clip there about the benefits for the stock on your farm. I know you have a mixed enterprise there. What would you see as the main benefits from that point of view?
I suppose one of the main benefits is with the change in climate that we have, wetter winters, drier summers, providing shelter and shade. So during the summer, from the sunshine for the animals, winter time, bit of shelter from the elements as well. I even saw this spring the ewes were putting the lambs in around the backs of the trees just to break the wind down.
Yeah,
just give them an extra bit of shelter in the fields.
Yeah, and that's probably how it would have done in nature in the first instance. From a tree species selection point of view, obviously you needed to choose something that was going to grow well in the area. What was your kind of driving behind those decisions?
We selected a diverse mix of trees. Some of them are faster growing, some of them are slower growing. So we have high quality timber, we have fruiting trees, and we have some quicker growing trees then as well, just to make up the mix there too. So it's site specific then as well. So there are trees that are going to grow in the ground that's available.
Very good. And the actual site selection itself, then, how did you choose which was the ideal field? I'm sure some people would say, well, look, I don't want to choose my best field necessarily for this, or what was your thinking behind that?
Well, I suppose my thinking behind it was the site isn't naturally where I'm going to be taking cuts of silage off of on a yearly basis or that, so it's not heavy machine site. I still have the option to go in and take cuts of silage off with the planting style that we went with. I suppose it's more from a water improvement point of view, biodiversity. So with the trees planted where they are, it's a buffer zone between the rest of the farm and the river. So to mitigate any nutrients leaching from the rest of the farm into the watercourse.
Yeah, so there's so many benefits to it. And in terms of the financial side of things, then, was there any big upfront payments that you had to make to plant the farm, or how did that work from a cash flow point of view?
Yeah, so I suppose I didn't have any major upfront payments. I made contact with a forestry company. They did all the paperwork for me, and I employed them to do all the work for me as well. So they took all that on board. So everything was their headache.
Right, okay. So it was a fairly seamless experience from your point of view. You didn't have to worry about too much of that paperwork side. It was just that initial decision to go ahead, and then in consultation with your various different advisors to come up with a mix that suited.
Yeah, and I suppose depending on the size of the site, you could look to take more of it on board yourself. If it was a small site and a larger site, then the likes of the forestry company is ideal.
Yes. So casting your eye down the road, I'm sure your children are looking at the longer term future for the farm as well. Where would you like to see that? What would you like to see it looking like in 20 years' time? Crystal
ball would be great, so it would. But with the diverse mix of trees there in it, we're looking at kind of a living shed for the animals. Also, we have farm accommodations, so it'll contribute to that in kind of an amenity for people that are staying on the farm to use. And then there's the sale of timber off of it. There's so much that we can do with it. So
there's lots of options down the line there. So we're going to hear from Terry Carroll now, who is Brian's Teagasc Advisor, and Terry's going to speak to us about the financial interaction between agroforestry and other schemes. So Terry, over to you.
Thanks, Mark, and good morning to everyone. Yeah, Terry Carroll is my name, Drystock Advisor in Kilkenny, and I have a few slides to go through on agroforestry and its interaction with other schemes. And I can say at the outset, it is a very favourable interaction with other schemes, so the Department of Agriculture has to be complimented on that. So to look at the core schemes, and I suppose these are facing all farmers at the moment, given that the 2026 BISS campaign has been launched there about a week ago. So, anyone coming to get their BISS application form completed, the core schemes that you'll be facing will be BISS, CRIS and ECO, and for people with disadvantaged lands, they'll also have the ANC available to them. So on BISS itself, so forestry planted in 2026, can be eligible for drawing down a BISS payment, and the parcel eligibility and had given right to a payment under the previous campaign, the BPS, which was there from 2015 to 2022, now called the BISS. Once that's in situ, it can give right to a BISS payment this year, and obviously agroforestry fully eligible, the same as any forestry can be for the BISS. The CRIS then, it's payable to all farmers on the first 30 eligible hectares, worth about €43 a hectare, and agroforestry is fully eligible there. If it is part of that first 30 hectares, it will draw down your CRIS payment. On the eco scheme, that's available to everyone as well. It's worth about €66 a hectare. Agroforestry, again, fully eligible where the applicant meets the required eco scheme practices. And for most people, that can be fairly straightforward. So again, fully eligible agroforestry. On ANC then, or used to be called disadvantaged, now ANC, or areas of natural constraint. So where you have such land, the ANC monies is payable on the same ground as newly planted agroforestry. So again, fully complementary. As regards to nitrates eligibility with agroforestry, so land under agroforestry is fully eligible for nitrates allowance, and that's at the 170 kilos of organic nitrogen stocking rate. Obviously, people in derogation that are farming at a higher level than that, the agroforestry is only eligible up to the 170 kilos stocking rate. And also, it's eligible if previously ash and now agroforestry under the reconstitution ash dieback scheme. It's also available for nitrates counting. So if we're planting now under a forestation measure in 2026 or ash dieback 2009 onwards under the FT8 agroforestry, people in that situation should declare the land under BISS form this year as Forestry 2026, Forestry 2026. The department will update the parcel to forestry eligible agroforestry, or if it happens to be agroforestry being planted where you had previous ash dieback from 2009, the department will update the parcel to forestry eligible agroforestry recon. So we would advise they're putting in a note, probably in the note section of the BISS, just to highlight that to the department, but they have to verify later on in the year to change the category to either of those on the bottom of the slide. As regards to other schemes that several people are also in there, the acre scheme and the organics, how does that interact with agroforestry? And again, very favourably. On the acre scheme, you can split parcels to accommodate new planting, or you can convert parcels from acres, could be maybe in low input grass or extensive grazing. They can be converted from acres to forestry once you have been in the acre scheme for a minimum of 2 years, and everyone in acres, be it acres 1 or acres 2, are more than 2 years now at this stage. As regards the organic scheme, organic scheme parcels can be converted to forestry, and regarding specifically agroforestry, agroforestry premia can be paid in addition to the organic payment. So that's a huge benefit for organic farmers there, and that organic payment will be at the drystock rate, which will be €300 a hectare for the first 2 years, dropping down to €250 a hectare for the remaining 3 years. So just to look at an example, and this is a made-up example of a drystock farmer. We said this year he or she is putting in their applications and their BISS form. So let's assume the farmer has 35 hectares and they're going to plant 10 hectares of agroforestry maybe in the next few weeks or month. And they're also an organic producer. So the farm is eligible for BISS, CRIS, Eco Scheme, and we say it's in ANC category 2. So the BISS payment there, if we assume their entitlements, and everyone has a different value entitlement, if it's at the national average in this situation, €155 per each entitlement. So we've 35 hectares at the 155 rate of entitlement is the 5425. CRIS there we have the max payment because we have at least 30 hectares. We have the 30 by the 43. On the eco scheme, we have 35 hectares of land. Agroforestry is not impacting on us here at all, so we're getting the eco scheme on all 35 hectares. On ANC, again, there's 2 split payments within the category 2 ANC that I'm assuming here, but again, we're getting the full ANC money there coming to 3,190 because agroforestry is fully complementary with ANC. On the organics then, the dry stock rate there of €300, we have 35 hectares, including agroforestry, 10,500 that's coming to. And actually, as you can see, the agroforestry payment itself, 9,750 there, 10 hectares at €975. So in total, our payments there for 2026 would come to over 32,000 for this situation of being an organic producer and planting 10 hectares of agroforestry. So I suppose the net gain for putting into agroforestry is the agroforestry premium, because it's not impacted anywhere else on us. We're getting the 9,750 from agroforestry. So what are the take-home messages then? I suppose, look, what's fairly obvious there is agroforestry can fit in very well with other farm enterprises and schemes. And then the other benefits, and there are many benefits there, financial and otherwise, across a range of forest types, and this is various types of forestry: animal welfare, biodiversity and water quality enhancement, carbon take-up and recreational resource. And then I suppose finally then support is available to help you make informed decisions on your individual situation and your option. So I leave it at that, Mark, and back to you.
Thank you, Terry. And before Terry joins us here in the panel, a reminder that if you have any questions that you would like to put to our speakers, please use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. So I'm delighted to be joined. Thank you, Terry, for joining us.
Good morning, Mark.
Also thank you for a really excellent presentation on the facts and figures behind agroforestry. We're also joined by John Casey, who's a forestry specialist with Teagasc. Welcome, John. So we're going to, I suppose, deal with some of the questions coming in from our audience, which are streaming already. But just, Terry, just to talk about the beyond 2026 scenario there. You talked about the 2026, the 9,750 coming through from agroforestry and the total amount. And of course, organics bumping up that figure as well. What does it look like beyond that?
Yeah, good question, Mark. Look at the farm example that I showed. That farmer, he or she, is earning over 32,000 for this year, 2026 in premia. Organics and acres being a big chunk of that. But just to look at the schemes breakdown within making up that 32,000 and where are they going over the next few years. So I suppose the core schemes there of BISS, CRIS, ECO and ANC, they are in situ till the end of next year, officially to the end of 27, and they're up for reform thereafter. Now, whether that rolls on another year or so, we don't know, but I suppose we can only say those figures there are there at the end of next year for certain. And as highlighted in the presentation, agroforestry on new ground is going to draw all those premia. Obviously, just be careful that, where ash dieback and you're reconstituting that plantation that was planted pre-2009, that ground won't be eligible for BISS or CRIS or ANC, but for new agroforestry on new ground gets all those. So as regards those figures, the end of next year for sure. After that, we don't know. With regards to organics, that people sign up to that scheme for 5 years. So if you're in it there, you have the 2 years of high money in conversion and 3 years of lower money. Normally, after the 5 years of organic, people often go on for another 5 years, and that'll be going in at the converted rate, the lower rate. And with agroforestry, as Minister Healy-Rae said earlier, they're obviously promoting that. That payment of 975, which is tax-free, which is a huge thing. It's a 10-year program, so if Brian is in it for a year or two, he's sure of another 8 years. So overall, the money's going forward. It might be exactly 32,000, but there could be the big end of 32,000 still. The organics and agroforestry are fairly secure. The other monies there have to be renegotiated.
Very good. And just to follow through on that question there around the 10 years, and Minister, if I could turn to you on that particular question, what was the rationale for limiting the scheme payments to 10 years when compared with other forestry schemes?
Well, you see, with the other forestry schemes, you have to be fair and balanced in this. When you plant, we'll say conifers, or when you plant any type of softwood, and you're actually fencing off your land, and it's gone away from your productive farmland, whereas agroforestry, as was excellently presented there by everybody, and including Terry, then going through the finances in detail, when you can continue to get your other payments with agroforestry and still have the benefit of grazing to whatever type that is, then there obviously had to be a differential between the different types of forestry programs. But the one thing that I'd highlight, and we're talking a lot here today about agroforestry, But you must remember, we've over 20 different schemes whereby people who want to plant trees in whatever shape or form that they want. It could be as small as doing an acre plot, which you can actually do without license, and which has a lot of benefits. You can do, hedgerows, shelters around sheds or entrances into farms, and like there are so many different things you can do. That if people come forward and if they get the excellent advice from people like Teagasc or go to other private foresters and say, right, explain to me what would suit my farming, what would suit my family farm type. Well, I mean, there is great schemes there. And when you look at the financial implications, then again, Terry made an excellent job of explaining whether it's ECO, whether it's CRIS, BISS, all of the different programs that are there, how you can incorporate those with your agroforestry payment. That is definitely a thing that needs to be looked at, and looked at very, very seriously.
Okay, thank you, Minister. John, if I could turn to you on the more technical aspects of agroforestry, what type of trees can you plant for agroforestry? For example, are apple trees permitted?
Yes, they are actually. So normally what you have is you'd have mainstay crops, tree crops like oak, sycamore, cherry, walnut perhaps, but you can put up to 15% fruit-bearing or nut-bearing trees as well, so there's the possibility of that. And there is also a pilot scheme that's going to come out soon of forest gardens in which you can put up to 40% of these fruit or nut-bearing trees. So there's quite a bit of a variety. So you can, like Brian mentioned earlier on, if you had an ecotourism thing, you could have people coming down, they could be picking some of the fruit, but you're also trying to grow quality trees as well. Mm-hmm. So you're looking at into the future, it's not just the biodiversity, but you can produce, for oak and cherry, if it's high quality, it's also high price. So there is that option there as well.
Some questions coming in around the different types of livestock that agroforestry would be suitable for, horses, cattle and so on. Does anyone have any comments on that as to what level or the suitability of that planting, or is it more for a younger, smaller stock? Maybe Brian, from your own experience?
Yeah, I think the smaller stock initially anyway. Once the trees get more established, then they'll be more robust and they'll stand up to the heavier stock that bit better. But initially, you'd be talking the younger stock, sheep, calves, and then as they mature, you can start introducing older stock. And then I suppose if you go with the group trees, they're fully fenced around, so you can have your stronger stock in those fields then either, because they can't get next to near the trees. Okay, so that might be more suitable scenario.
For larger animals.
And just in addition to that, Mark, then people might be wondering what sort of fertiliser can you apply to that field. So largely where Brian has his agroforestry, that field is largely treated like a normal grassland field. So the rules regarding N and P allowance there is governed by the SI 588 that all farmers will be complying with. So your previous year's stocking rate would determine the fertiliser allowance you have on it in conjunction with any soil test or whatever. And remember, our stocking rate is limited to the normal 170 kilos organic stocking rate. Even if you're in derogation, you're still at 170. So it's fully complementary to normal practice.
Quite a number of questions coming in here, John, in relation to ash dieback, or sites that had ash dieback, and their suitability and the steps that would be involved in actually bringing into agroforestry, stump removal. Could you talk to us about what's involved there and
certainly.
That reconstitution, I think, of forestry is the heading there.
Yeah, certainly. So there's a grant available of €2,000 per hectare for the clearing of the ground. Then there is a grant available for the replanting of the stock itself, and there's a further €5,000 available as part of the scheme to get it up and going afterwards. So it is quite generously funded. You're looking at a situation, if it is post 2009 that the trees were planted and is BISS eligible, you can continue to draw down BISS payments then as well.
Okay. A question here in relation to for agroforestry. Is it classified as a permanent land use change? Could a farming successor remove this 20 years down the line, or what's the rules around that?
No, agroforestry comes under the Forestry Act 2014, so it is a permanent land use change. And this is one of the things to consider before you plant. You know, check the eligibility of the ground and be aware of the circumstances of that. And this is one of the reasons why, you know, it is a good idea to talk to your agricultural advisor, whether it's Teagasc or somebody else, just to make sure that you understand what the implications are. It is a permanent land use change.
Okay, very good. It's a question here, why is there a limit of 15% fruit trees in the system, and how are you planning for various species over time? Maybe John, if you wanted to comment on that.
Again, I suppose the silver pasture system, yes, is 15%, but the forest gardens will be up to 40%. So that's a very considerable number then at that stage. And you know, I guess at 40% you're looking at a combination of smaller shrub trees or small trees, and then also more canopy trees as well, which of course will be a greater benefit to the livestock. As mentioned earlier on, you know, traditionally we've looked at trees as shade from wind and rain, but coming into the future, it's quite possible it could be shade from the sun as well. Possibly not tomorrow, but this summer, hopefully.
In terms of grazing management, then we talked about maybe having younger stock there for when the trees are still making a start. Is there advice there around when to graze or when to exclude stock to avoid any damage? Or Brian, what's your experience?
Yeah, well, I'm continuing as I was beforehand, rotational grazing in, moving after a couple of days and back around. I suppose the biggest thing, not having stock over hungry if they're in the field. If they're over hungry, they're going to eat everything anyway. That's when you can have excessive damage done. But move and keep things tipping along seems to work fine.
Very good.
And just maybe to add to that, because I'm afraid people think that I have to have sheep to have agroforestry. You know, you can equally, if you want to, you can make silage or hay on the field, fully allowed, obviously, and that's what might suit some people. Remember, there's a good distance between the rows there, so there is scope for doing that there, and some farmers may choose to do that, so with no grazing stock.
Very good.
Mark, I mentioned one other thing as well. There's very good information, research information from AFBI and Loughgall up there in County Armagh, where they've looked at extending the grazing season, that you can have up to 17 weeks extra grazing season, partly at the start of the year, but the greater benefit is the end of the year, where the ground is more trafficable by livestock such as sheep. So you're extending the grazing season, which means there's less time inside sheds, you're reducing your feed bill, but you're also reducing the risk of animals being in close confine, and probably your veterinary bills are coming down as well. So it's not so much that you're getting more grass, but you're getting the grass for a longer period of time.
Okay, so there's a question coming in around the grass growth reductions, or are there any observable grass growth reductions?
Yes, once the canopy grows up, you do have to manage the canopy so that it doesn't cover out the area completely. To be woodland, you need 20% canopy cover, so that the trees will be there, but you don't want it to crowd out the grass. You're probably looking at a reduction of maybe 25 to 28% at the height of the growing season. But at that stage, there's a surplus of grass there anyway. The benefit is there's an extended growing season at the tail end of the season, at basically the shoulders of the growing period.
Very good. Minister, if I could ask you, just in terms of you're in office there, a relatively short period of time in terms of your brief on forestry, but what have you observed any changes in people's attitudes to forestry over that time, in terms of their willingness to plant or interest in the different schemes? And you talked about the diversity of schemes that are available to people there.
Yes, well, first of all, the first thing I'd say to you is confidence. I and the department, the officials, we're all growing confidence in the whole idea of planting trees, despite the fact that there was a rocky start this year with Storm Owen, as I already stated. And we had other problems. We had issues with licensing, which has been completely turned around. We've incorporated now felling licenses with thinning licenses, which has streamlined the whole delivery of licenses, whether it's for thinning, clear fell, whether it's making roads. All of the different type of licenses that are issued by this department are now being issued in a very prompt fashion. That's first of all. Secondly, the whole confidence in the sector. Our sawmills, for example, are doing excellent work in securing markets. Our people involved in forestry, the foresters, the companies. And again, as I said already, we're all part of a team. Teagasc are doing great work, and Quills are doing great work. And you can make money out of timber. And as I stated already, there's something very nice about being able to earn money and have it free from income tax. There's a very nice kick to that, And the other one point, following on from something that John Casey said there, because I believe this is very important, because I really want to get this message out with regard to the ash dieback scheme, because the misinformation that's out there is frightening. John was obviously very factual. So it's 2,000 to go in and clear the ground, 3,000 to replant it, and 5,000, the way I'll word that, is for the farmers themselves. And but one thing about that scheme, and this might not be out there very well yet, but in December of 2027, that scheme will be shutting down, because I can't have a situation that my department will be what I would call, dealing with inherited problems, going into the future and trying to balance books and balance budgets. So my message very, very clearly to people who have ash dieback, take this very seriously. There is money out there at present. It's substantial money. I'm very sorry that ash dieback came into your forests. I'm very, very sorry that, your pension pot maybe was attacked in this way, and your hopes and dreams for the future. But we in the department and this government are really committed to helping you. But what I'm telling you very, very bluntly, but very, very factually, is that help will be finishing in December of 2027. So don't delay. It might seem like a long way off. A lot of people, I'd rather be looking at a new young tree growing than an old tree dying. So, it's time to start to move on. Use your land again, claim the money that you're entitled to, get in the companies that are going to help you, and just get on with it. That's the message, and it's very, very clear, and you literally have that time frame to do so.
Okay, thank you, Minister. So the clock is very much ticking on that. We're just coming up close to time here. Some comments coming through from people how suitable agroforestry is for poultry farming and for people who have free-range poultry operations and so on. Some questions just coming in there in relation to just one of the more technical aspects there for upland areas. Actually, John, you might take that for us. How suitable is agroforestry for more upland areas?
I would say it's going to depend. Okay, normally the restrictions for broadleaf trees are 200 metres in the western seaboard and about 300 metres in the eastern seaboard. But it's what I would say would be at the application stage that the Department of Agriculture will check this and see the suitability. What I would say is that peatland areas, it won't be suitable for high exposed deep peat areas. That is, it's unlikely they're going to be agroforestry sites.
Okay. Thank you, John, and thank you to our panel. Unfortunately, we're out of time this morning. Minister, maybe we'd give you the final word before we wrap up, and to thank you for your time this morning and your commitment to this new initiative.
Well, I thank Francis, obviously, for earlier on, yourself, Mark, the team that are there with you. It was very, very important that Brian Nicholson, I visited his farm, I met his family. He has a great vision for what agroforestry is going to do, not just for now. He's looking at long term, which is a very sensible way for people to look at anything you do in life. You have to look in jumps of not just this year, but 5, 10, 15, 20 years time, as long as God will be good enough to leave us live, and obviously the people that will come after us. But there is something very special about planting a tree, whatever type of tree that is, watching it grow, and knowing that you're doing good, not just financially, but incorporating it. And the one message I'd like to give today is that we are not trying to tell people, well, cover all your land in trees. We're not saying that, or we never did say that, or we never would say that, unless it was something particularly that you wanted to do. But what I do believe in is that every landholding has room for some type of trees. We're there to support that, and it can enhance your farm. It can make your farm better. And if everybody does their part, it is definitely good for the environment, and it's good for the economy, both locally and nationally. And we have an excellent climate for growing timber of all types, hardwoods and softwoods. So my recommendation to people is talk, get advice. And it's like we were maybe doing a little bit of jokey at the start, that it's like the people long ago with the ad on the television, do you know what a tracker mortgage is? Well, I'd like to think that maybe after this excellent webinar that people might know now what agroforestry is, and if you've any doubt, the information is there very close to hand to you. So thank you all, is all I want to say. A humble thank you to all of you for your work and for putting this excellent webinar together. Thank you all.
Thank you, Minister. And like the Minister said, there's lots of support out there and lots of information on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie/agroforestry. So I want to thank our contributors all today. On next week's webinar, we'll be joined by Mick Houlihan from Board BIA, who will be discussing meeting global sustainability expectations. Until then. You've been listening to the podcast version of the Teagasc Signpost Series, the weekly webinar that promotes and examines sustainability in Irish farming. Don't forget to join us live every Friday morning for our latest webinar. For more, visit teagasc.ie. And you can also rate, review and subscribe to the Signpost Series on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm Mark Gibson, and thanks for listening.